Howdy, friend. Spitz here, and this is Feed Bandit, the Texas First Outdoors podcast. If you have ever stood on a bridge and looked down at a massive winding ribbon of reddish-brown water cutting its way through the rolling hills and rocky bluffs of our great state, you have felt the calling of the true Texas frontier. There is an absolute sense of freedom that comes over a man when he packs up his camping gear, ties down his fishing rods, and shoves a canoe or a kayak off the muddy bank into a river that has been flowing through our history since long before the first cabins were ever built. I am talking about taking a multi-day float trip down the historic Brazos River. This isn't just a simple afternoon paddle or a lazy inner tube float down a crowded town creek. The Brazos is a giant living artery of the Lone Star State, covering hundreds of miles from the high plains of the Panhandle all the way down to the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. It is a river of deep sandstone canyons, wide limestone gravel bars, and hidden fishing holes where giant bass and heavy catfish lurk under the fallen willow trees. Today, we are going to dive deep into the world of planning an authentic Brazos River float trip. We will talk about how to map out your river run, the unique experience of primitive camping on lonely sandbars under the big stars, and the exact fishing tactics and safety tips you need to fill your cooler and navigate these waters like a true frontier scout. So, pull up a chair. We have a lot of river to cover. To understand the magic of the Brazos River, you have to look at it as a giant highway for native wildlife and a sanctuary for fishermen. Because almost all of the land surrounding the river is private property, the water channel itself is often the only way for a regular person to access miles and miles of pristine, untouched outdoor country. When you are floating down between the high cliffs, the modern world completely disappears behind the trees. You find yourself sharing the river bends with nesting bald eagles, white-tailed deer drinking from the shallows, and wild turkeys roosting in the giant cottonwood trees along the banks. But for an outdoorsman, the real action is happening right under the surface of the moving current. The Brazos is world famous for its incredible freshwater fishing. The rocky stretches below the big dams are packed with hard-fighting striped bass, massive blue catfish, and some of the scrappiest largemouth and spotted bass you will ever hook on a line. These river fish are completely different from the fish that live in a quiet lake. Because they spend their whole lives swimming against a constant current, they are pure muscle and grit. When a 3-pound river bass grabs your lure in fast water, it will fight like a 6-pounder, using the moving current to pull your boat around and dive straight toward the sharp rocks. Hooking one of these fighters while navigating a small rapid is a high-stakes, adrenaline-pumping experience that will test your gear and your smile. Let's get into the technical deep dive on how to successfully prepare for and execute a multi-day fishing and camping trip down the Brazos. My first big tip for you is to study the water release rates and flow metrics from the upstream dams before you ever load your trailer. Stretches of the river, like the famous run below Possum Kingdom Lake or Lake Whitney, depend entirely on how much water the dams are releasing. If the flow rate is too low, the river will turn into a shallow maze of dry gravel bars, forcing you to drag your heavy, loaded boat over the slick rocks for miles, which will ruin your back and your boots. But if the flow rate is too high, the river becomes a fast, muddy torrent that can wash away your camp and turn small rapids into dangerous traps. Look online at the United States Geological Survey charts and find the flow rate measured in cubic feet per second, which folks call CFS. For a safe, enjoyable fishing float in a canoe or kayak, you want to look for a steady sweet spot between 300 and 800 cubic feet per second. This gives you plenty of water to float over the shoals while keeping the current gentle enough to fish every pocket of water effectively. My second tip is to pack your camping and survival gear with ultimate security and weight balance. Because you will be primitive camping on the river islands and public gravel bars, you must bring everything you need to survive, including a tent, sleeping pad, water filter, and cooking stove. Pack all your dry gear inside heavy-duty rubber dry bags, squeeze out all the excess air, and roll the tops down tight at least 3 or 4 times. Most importantly, use sturdy nylon straps or bungee cords to tie every single item securely to the frame or hull of your boat. If you hit a hidden boulder or a swift log jam and tip your boat over, anything that isn't strapped down will immediately sink to the bottom or float down the river into the next county. Keep the heaviest items, like your water jugs and cooler, packed low down in the center of the boat to keep your center of gravity stable in the moving current. My third tip is to match your fishing tactics to the structure of the river channel. River bass love to hide in places where they can sit out of the fast current while watching for food to float past. Target the eddies, which are pockets of calm, swirling water that form right behind large boulders, bridge pilings, or fallen logs. Cast your lure slightly upstream into the fast-moving water and let the current naturally carry it down into the calm, eddy pocket. A heavy jig with a crawfish trailer, a spinning bait, or a topwater propeller lure worked slowly along the logs will trigger an immediate hard strike from a waiting predator. My fourth tip is to understand the legal boundaries and ethics of riverbed camping in Texas. Under the law, navigable rivers like the Brazos are public highways, and the public is legally allowed to camp on the sandbars and gravel beds along the river channel, up to what is called the ordinary high water mark. However, the dry land behind the tree line belongs to the local ranchers, and stepping past the high water line onto private property without permission is a serious trespassing offense. When you pick a gravel bar to pitch your tent for the night, always choose an open, clear island or a low bank well within the riverbed. Most importantly, keep a clean camp and follow the rule of packing out every single piece of your trash, including your empty cans and plastic wrappers, to protect the pristine beauty of the waterway. My fifth tip is to prepare for the heavy sun and changing temperatures of a river canyon. When you are out on the open water, the sun doesn't just hit you from above. It reflects straight up off the water's surface, doubling the heat on your face and arms. Wear a lightweight, long-sleeved fishing shirt with a hood, a good pair of polarized sunglasses to see hidden logs under the water, and keep a heavy thermal container of fresh drinking water right between your knees so you stay hydrated throughout the long paddle. Taking a multi-day float trip down the Brazos River is a premier Texas tradition because it strips away all the busy, noisy distractions of modern life and forces you to live by the rhythm of the water and the sun. There is a deep, unforgettable peace that comes over a camp at twilight when you have pitched your tent on a clean gravel bar, gathered a few pieces of dry driftwood to build a small cooking fire, and you can sit back listening to the moving current hiss against the rocks while a fresh catch of river catfish fries up in a cast-iron skillet. Preserving the tradition means approaching these historical waters with a spirit of humility and true sportsmanship, understanding that we are traveling through a landscape that belongs to all Texians and to the wild creatures that depend on it for survival. Protecting the legacy means passing down these essential paddling, knot tying, and woodcraft skills to our children, showing them that true adventure doesn't require a screen or a crowded amusement park. It just requires a sturdy boat, a straight paddle, and a love for the open sky. When you wake up at dawn inside your tent, see the white morning mist hanging low over the red bluffs, and hear the first whistle of a cardinal from the willow trees, you realize how blessed we are to call this grand country our home. Pack your gear wisely and enjoy the wild freedom of the Texas rivers. So, what do you think of that? Are we right on target, or did we totally miss the boat on that one? Email us at howdy@feedbandit.com and let us know either way. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear to show off your Texas First Outdoors pride. Preserve the tradition, protect the legacy, and remember, always support your local feed store. If you're there for them, they'll be there for you when you need them the most out in the field. Stand tall, fellow Texian. We'll talk soon.